going on with it? No? Okay. We are a few days before Purim. Take a few minutes, it's a little bit more than a few minutes, to go through some important nekudas that are relevant to the halachas of Shabbos Zocher and Purim and Miftzayim on Purim. This Shabbos is Parsha Zocher. Now, everything I'm going to say now, everybody knows. But it's always good to refresh. Might be, remember everything that has to be done. It's a one-day Yom Tov, but there's a lot of details in it. The mitzvah sasem in HaTorah to remember what Amalek did and to destroy him. According to some opinions, it has to be part of this mitzvah, mideiraisa, is that once a year it should be read from the Torah with brachas in front of 10 people, and it became established that takana was that this is done Shabbos before Purim. Remez l'davar v'yomim ha'elu niskarim v'naisim. Niskarim comes before Naisim. So on Purim you do Mechias Amalek. On Shabbos Zocher, which is right before, you do the Niskarim, which is the schira of Maisa Amalek and its Mechia. According to most opinions, this is a Midiraisa. Everybody's a Kriya. This Kriya is Midiraisa. Therefore, we try to, the rest of the year, because the Torah is Midirabanan, this Shabbos is Midiraisa, we try to do it the best way possible. So the minhag is to try to get the best Sefer Torah that you have in the Aron Kodesh, nicest Sefer Torah. You get a Baal Kodesh that reads clearly, again, knows all the Trop well, knows the Nekudas well, for the Kriya. The Baal Kodesh should have in mind to be Moitzi everyone with his Kriya. The people in the Shul should also have in mind to be Yoitze, this mitzvah deiraisa with this Kriya. However, if you did not have in mind, somebody did not have in mind, he is still Yoitze, especially if his actions show that he intended to be in Shul and listen for this Kriya. For example, if somebody doesn't usually come to Shul, and on Parsha Zocher is in Shul, you know that he had kavanah to be Yoitze this mitzvah. Similarly, if somebody usually talks during Kriyas HaTorah, and on Shabbos Parsha Zocher, on Kriya of Zocher, he's quiet, you know that it's because he's intending, he doesn't have to have special kavanah. His actions show that that he actually had in mind to do it. You read it slowly. There's a machlokes if you're supposed to read Zecher or Zecher. The minhag is that each one, in the Parsha Zocher, on Shabbos, the Iker one is with a Tzedeh. So that's why you do first Zecher, then Zecher. On Purim, the Iker one is with a Segel. That's why you do Zecher, then Zecher. The source for this minhag is in Ktsois HaShulchan from Rabbi Chaim Noah. In the back, he brings this minhag. He says that he heard from my grandfather's grandfather, was a Baal Kodesh in Chevron, and Shmuel Tamchem Shuchat. He's the one who told him this minhag of Zecher, in the name of the Teras Chesed. The Lubavitcher Rav, who from Lublin, then moved to Eretz Yisrael. Moving from Teras Chesed to Teras Chesed, there's a machlekes if women are supposed to hear Parsha Zocher or not. The machlekes is dependent on whether women are mechuyev in the mitzvah of Milchemes Amalek. Some opinions say that the women are not mechuyev in the mitzvah of this milchama, zman grome, whatever it is. And some opinions say that they are mechuyev. Based on that, the machlekes. Some people say that women should go here. Some people say women should not. The Teras Chesed, that they don't have to, no obligation. Teras Chesed writes, Minhag hanoshim shelanu, sheme'olam einam shoymois kriyas Parsha Zocher klal. Ve'ein ma'aroi lahachmir bozeh. The Teres Chesed writes that. He was Lubavitch Rav. The minhag is not to. The Maril Diskin, a Rav in Yerushalayim, they say not much different, not too much afterwards. Writes, boy from Pasha, that the minhag in Eretz Yisrael is that women do hear Parsha Zachar. Regardless of what the minhag was, today the minhag is that women do hear Parsha Zachar. The Rebbe mentioned it in a few sichos. In one of the sichos, the Rebbe said it in the way that, according to some poskim, in Parsha Zachar Tov Shemam Gimel, the Rebbe says, according to some poskim, women are chayev to do it. The minhag already is, and Shei Bnei Yisrael already noyeg to go to hear and hear Parshas Zachar. If somebody does not hear Parshas Zachar, Purim is the time when he's able to be Yotzeh Parshas Zachar. Well, the mitzvah, and here's a state in Purim, if it works for men, it definitely works for women. If a woman can't make it to shul, for whatever reason, usually there's a baby or whatever it is, another reason, then Purim, you go to shul and hear Parshas Zachar. Woman, yeah. The minhag, the Rebbe writes, the minhag is to go to shul. Well, you can't tell women to go to shul if they're not able to. Let's move on from Parsha Zachar, we're moving to Tainis Esther. Tainis Esther, okay, starts in the Leis HaShachar. If you want to eat before, you want to wake up early in the morning and eat before, you have to remember to make a Tanai before you go to bed, that you're planning on waking up in the morning. And if you did not make such a Tanai, then it's asur to eat in the morning. Right? That is, the rest is the same as other fasts. If you make a mistake without realizing you ate or you drank, you stop and you continue fasting until the end of the day. Women who gave birth, women who are pregnant, people who are sick, people who will become sick from fasting are patur from fasting, like the other, call them lighter fasts. The easier fasts. Yeah. Tainis Esther is one of the easiest, lightest fasts because it's not connected to the Churban. It's not on the time that it happened. And it's secondary only to Tainis B'chayrim, which are Mevatel with the Siyum. The main mitzvah, everybody knows about Tainis Esther, otherwise you know, the slichas, everything is the same. There's a unique mitzvah, which is Machzis HaShekel. There is no connection directly of mitzvah, the mitzvah de'iraisa of Machzis HaShekel has nothing to do with Tainis Esther or with Purim, as it was Korbanos. However, the minhag became to give Machzis HaShekel on Tainis Esther after Mincha. It was nikva to do it in Chodesh Adar, because Chodesh Adar was the time that already says that the Eibusher knew that Haman is going to weigh the money for the Yidden, and therefore, Tainis Esther, therefore on Chodesh Adar we do the Shkolim. And the original minhag was just to give a special amount of tzedakah. The minhag became to do Machzis HaShekel. Machzis HaShekel on the Tainis Esther before Mincha. First of all, it's the only fast in the Chodesh Adar. We do it in Chodesh Adar, the mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel. Tainis is Mechaper, Machzis HaShekel is Mechaper. We connect them both. If you forgot to do it on Tainis Esther, you could do it Purim morning before Kriyas HaMegillah. We'll get to who has to be given soon. Wait. Who is obligated to give it? Really, every person, every man, every male above the age of 20. That was what the mitzvah was when in the Torah. The minhag already became afterwards that also already from bar mitzvah. By now the minhag is you give for every single person in your household. And some people even do for a pregnant woman, they do also for the baby the baby. Not only that, the Rebbe said that you should train kids, mitzat chinuch, that the machzis hashekel should be given from their own money. So, one of the things that the Rebbe spoke on different occasions, that kids should give tzedakah from their own money. This is one of the things that I said, machzis hashekel, part of chinuch, the kids should give it from their own money. How much are you supposed to give? The value of 3 half coins of your local currency. In America, it's $3 half, $1.50 per person. In countries where the currency is worthless, and it's usually valued by the currency of a different country, it's pegged to the dollar or to another currency, then you give the value of it according to that. Some people, now I don't know, you have to wait the time says to know how it's going to be. Now listen, today I don't know what the value is, last week it was different, and I don't know.
What's about giving the value of the silver?
That's it. So there is a chumrah to give the value of the silver if you want to give the value of what machzis hashekel was worth in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. 9.6 grams of silver. I don't know what the amount of it is in today's dollars, but you could search it. There's people here who have a mumchias in coins. I see both of them on their cell phones now, so they'll get us an answer fast enough. Who do you give the money to? You can give it to poor people, you give it to people who study Torah, but especially to give it to shuls and to batei midrashes because they're similar to the Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash, after Beis Hamikdash was destroyed,
9.6, you said?
Yeah, grams. How much is it?
This one? Under 8.30.
That's for each one. Multiply it by 3. But $8 times 3, yeah. Times 3, it says $24.
No, you're conflating two things here. There's the machzis shekel, and now you want to add because the
Some people do 3,
But they're mixing up two things here. You have 3 for different reasons.
You really, you have to give the 9.6 grams.
But if you're giving 9, then it's not times 3 because you're only giving 3 times because it says 3 times a shekel.
Right.
So therefore, but now, that's what we're doing now. So zikr that. So you can't start saying out of zikr that I'm going to give 3 times the machzis shekel. Machzis shekel is different thing.
I hear.
1.3 times, 3.3 times, 3.1 times. Well, let's figure it out.
Whatever the person before you in shul does, that's what you do. Purim night. Mitzvahs of Purim. All the mitzvahs are Purim day except for one, which is Mikra Megillah. There's another thing you're not supposed to. Now, before Mikra Megillah, like before other mitzvahs, you do not eat at all. Someone who is hard for him could drink, could eat something else. Drinking is not so bad. It's compared to shofar and to lulav and to the other mitzvahs that we do not eat before being mekayim the mitzvah. And by Purim, there's this poskim are even more machmer than by the other ones. Even though you're talking about after a fast day, they're more machmer. Women are also chayiv in Mikra Megillah, therefore they should not be eating before Mikra Megillah either. Obviously, if they are weak, and so they could, or a person is weak, he's not going to be able to hear the Megillah properly, he's close to that stage in the day, then he could break the fast before Mikra Megillah. Yoda inush benafshei, each person knows at what stage he is weak and he's not doing well, and at what stage he's just looking, his Yetzer Hara is looking for an excuse for him to eat by claiming he's weak. That's each person to his own. I can't be the one to tell you what the level is. Like if you're dizzy and you're falling, then you shouldn't have been fasting to begin with. You've broken your fast sometime earlier. If you see black, you also should have been broken your fast sometime earlier. If you fall, call it salah. Otherwise, we're not talking about those things. You should wear big day Shabbos when Purim starts, for the Megillah, L'chatchila. You say V'al Nissim, start V'al Nissim early at night. You say V'al Nissim in davening, you say V'al Nissim in benching. If you forgot to say V'al Nissim in davening, you don't have to do davening again. If you remembered before you took the 3 steps back, you say Yehirotzim Ilfanecha, you should do Shtas Al Nissim V'Shis Al V'Sein. You continue, and the same thing in benching. If you forgot, you don't repeat benching, but you just do the Harachman Uyasal Al Nissim K'may Sha'asal Al V'Sein B'Yom Hem B'Zman Hazeh, and you read it.
So, Purim is a Kapat day.
Not like Hanukkah. Yes. Hanukkah, it says clearly in Sefer HaMenhagim that you don't wear big Shabbos for lighting Hanukkah candles. Yeah. There is no Chiyuv Seudas Purim on Purim night. However, it's already written in the Mechaber and the Ramah that you have to be happy and laharbis ktsas, to add a little bit in the Seudah. That means that you come home, you have more of a festive dinner than otherwise on a regular weekday. But it's not the full Seudah, and it's not the Chiyuv of Seudah on Purim. Purim day, you should wake up earlier than usual because there's a lot of mitzvahs on Purim, and you also want to be able to have time to do Mivtzayim after you've done everything. Between finishing the first 3 and starting Seudah, you don't have enough time to do Mivtzayim, so you have to make sure to wake up early, Purim morning. Just like at night, at day you also should not be eating or should not be eating anything before davening. The only time, like the Rosh Hashanah also, that you don't eat before Shachas because you have Shofar. Purim also, l'chatchila, you should not be eating before Shachris, before hearing Kriyas HaMegillah. Like I said before, if you missed Parsha Zachar, Purim day is a time you can catch up on Machzas HaShekel before Machzas HaShekel and on Parsha Zachar if you missed it. When you go through the Kriyas HaMegillah, we do Shechianu both by day and by night, even though the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur you only do it at night. Already the Tzemach Tzedek wrote that you do also by day. When you say the Shechianu Purim day, when the Balkei says Shechianu, you should have in mind to be Yotzeh all the mitzvahs of Purim, Shleich Mones, Tanis Levyanim, and the Seudah. Because you're not going to be making Shechianu on each one of the mitzvahs, but you have not been doing this mitzvah since a year ago. So you have one Shechianu that has in mind all these mitzvahs. Now, even though the Shechianu starts on, right, you do the Shechianu before Mikra Megillah, and you would think that it's only on the mitzvahs, that you can't do any mitzvahs before Mikra Megillah. If a poor person comes to you before Mikra Megillah, don't tell him, I didn't have a kavanah of Shechianu in Mikra Megillah, come to me in an hour. You yotze the mitzvah even before you hear the Shechianu of Mikra Megillah. You only give what? If you only gave one, if 2 people come to you, you don't know. The Megillah, you keep your tefillin on for Megillah, and we're going to go through, and then after Megillah, if you walk into shul in middle of Megillah, if you walk into shul in middle of Shachas and you didn't daven yet, and they're about to start reading Megillah, listen to the Megillah first. The reason for Mikra Megillah is pursuing this is the Mefarsim and Nesach Baruch Hu told us. That Rosh did for us. There is what you're supposed to have in mind. Like you're supposed to have who's chayiv and who has to hear Kriyas Megillah. Men and women are chayiv. Anybody over bar mitzvah is chayiv in Mikra Megillah, even though it's a mitzvah shehazman groma, because women were part of that miracle also. It's one of the things that Afhein hoyu ba'isei anes. Haman wanted to kill the woman too. They got saved, and therefore they also should be listening to the Megillah.
Day and night.
Day and night. Kids, if you're starting from the age of chinuch, it already says you should bring them to hear Kriyas HaMegillah. The age of chinuch is anywhere between 6, 7, 9, some people are going to say 3. If a kid didn't hear the Megillah, you should read the Megillah for them. Now, when you come to when the Megillah, the Chatchil should be read Beroiv Am Hadras Melech, you should have a minyan. If you don't have a minyan, then you could read it yourself. But the Chatchil, you should have a minyan. If there was already read, the big shul in town already read Megillah and you didn't hear it, you could read it yourself. You don't have to wait to collect 10 people to be able to read the Megillah. You can still do it. When you have, it says it's a good minhag to bring the kids, boys and girls, to hear the Megillah in shul. Even though there's no obligation to bring them to shul, the chinuch is they should hear the Megillah, but still it's better to bring them to shul. But you should not bring the ones that are not going to listen and just going to make noise and disrupt the Kriyas HaMegillah. Where do you draw the line? Because the Sikha from the Rebbe to bring the young kids to shul and they should make a lot of noise by Haman is if he's going to make a lot of noise by Haman, then bring him to shul. Even if he's a little kid, if he's going to be making noise when they're reading other psukim, then it's probably better to keep him at home. Women also, the Chatchila, should go to shul for that. Obviously, if you're not able to, then you could read in the house. If you are reading for other people, if you're reading for a woman, if you're reading for other people who are chayev in Megillah, the Chatchila, they should be saying the brachas themselves. You should not be the one saying the brachas for them. Or at least have them trained to say the bracha. If not, if nobody in the room knows how to say the bracha, then you could do the bracha for them. If you're going to read Megillah for women, and you're going to do it, first you should daven in shul, hear the Megillah there, and then you should go read for the woman. If your wife wants to hear Megillah before you go to shul, you're reading for her, you could read for her and she should make the bracha, and you should have in mind not to be yoitze with it, because it's better to be yoitze b'roivam hadras melech in shul. From Tzesek Achavim and on, you could read the Megillah until it's a Shachar, and daytime Megillah from Nates until Shkia. Don't read the Megillah after Shkia. Even though by Shofar, you could blow Shofar until Tzes, in Megillah you could only do until Shkia. If somebody asks you that he only has an option to hear Megillah once by day or by night, the Iker is by day, not by night. That's why we try to go Miftzayim by day. If you're able to do it, the person's going to be able to hear it only once, you should do by day. I said everybody should,
The Rosh had a whole thing where he said it's better for doing the same 2 days in a row, Purim and Shuchat Purim, than to do by day by day.
Do by day. Okay. If you have, like I said, you have to have, the Balkir has to have in mind to be moitzi the crowd. The crowd has to have in mind to be yoitze the mitzvah. The minhag is it's regular that the Gabbai or the Rav announces before Mikra Megillah what it is. That everybody should be yoitze. If you're reading for a person, now the chiyuv of Mikra Megillah, you have to hear every word. Every single word. If you're going to read for somebody, and that's why when you read the Megillah, it has to be a Balkir that reads a little bit slower than the speed of sound, and that way you'll be able to hear every word. To be able to go on and read for somebody, if he's not going to hear all the words, if you make the bracha, it's a bracha levatala. If he makes the bracha, he's making a bracha levatala. Unless he's properly going to read the Megillah, then lav dafka that you should be doing such a thing if he's not going to do it properly. Somebody who's deaf, and he's going on Miftzayim, you shouldn't be reading the Megillah for him. Someone's going to old age, he's going to fall asleep in the middle, he's not going to hear anything. It's also Shaila if you should be reading the Megillah. Space out is fine. You're there, you hear it. when you read the Megillah, you should read it loud enough. If you're reading for yourself, loud enough that you should be able to hear. You should be able to hear every word. You should be able to hear your own voice. That is when it comes to Mikra Megillah. Now, the Chatchila is supposed to read from a Megillah which is kosher. There is certain psukim you read it loud. Everybody knows what they are. Okay, now that is mitzad Mikra Megillah. The chiyuv of matanis le'evyonim. We'll start with that one. Chiyuv, and then we're going to go to Miftzayim, the different things in Miftzayim that are relevant to Miftzayim, the Rebbe Zeiros. Matanis le'evyonim. The Rambam says, better do matanis le'evyonim than to make a big party and send shalach manas to your friends. Because there's no bigger simcha on Purim than to make poor people happy. Every person is obligated to give matanis le'evyonim, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman. Kids should be, you should educate kids. They should also give mishleach manas. They should also give matanis le'evyonim. What is considered a poor person? Evyon is the highest, the lowest income bracket. Ani ve'evyon, Ani is not so broke and destitute. Evyon is lower than that. You don't have to check the other guy's bank account before giving him matanis le'evyonim. You will be yaitze the mitzvah, probably, by doing it, by giving it to people. You could do, the best is to give it to an actual poor person who needs it for that day, for Purim, for this, or for the Soda, for anything else. You could also give it to a tzedakah, which deals with these things. As long as it's given, it's better it should be given by Yom. You give it to two tzedakahs. Yeah. One tzedakah, one person. They're distributing it by Yom to more than two people. It says matanois le'evyonim. Yeah, you give two poor people. Each one should get one matana. How much is the matana? It's a machlekes. Machlekes is two shittas. Some people say it's a pruta, which is 5 cents. And some people say it should be enough for him to be able to eat the minimum that he needs of a meal. What's the minimum of a meal? What's the cheapest kosher meal a person could buy and be full? Probably $5-6 would be matanis le'evyonim for each one. $5-6 to each poor person, to two poor people. That is matanis le'evyonim. When it comes to mishleach manas, okay, now both mishleach manas and matanis le'evyonim are done only by day, not by night. When it comes to matanis le'evyonim, you give to anybody. The minhag is it's called poshid yad noisin. Anybody who asks, you give him. You don't check. After you give your first two poor people, you could just walk around with and give coins to whoever asks you for it. Mishleach manas is to one person. Chiyuv is to one person. There's a minhag to give to three. The Rebbe gave to three people. Kain and Levi and Yisrael, but Chiyuv is only to one person, 2 items of food. Chiyuv is on every person, man or woman. If you're a man, you give it to a man. If you're a woman, you give to a woman. I don't know if there's any woman here, but whoever it is, you give to you. If your wife wants, if you want to give to somebody, have your wife send to the woman rather than you sending to a woman sending to a man. If you send to a family, as a family, then it's not a problem.
Does your wife's giving count for yours?
No. Your wife is chayav to send to one person, you're chayav to send to one person also. Huh? No. It's one, you don't have to have you give, she gives. The women are also chayav in it. Kids should also be educated to do mishleach manas from the age of chinuch. There's a letter from the Rebbe where the Rebbe explains, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe asks, this is written to the head of Agudas Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, The Rebbe writes, this is Chelik Chof, a letter Yud Beis Ad Toshin Chof Aleph. Hitzayti lemoizdoisai, I gave atzor to my moizdos chinuch sheishtadlu shanaorim v'naoris hamchuyovim b'mitzvos v'toiva shegam ktanim mehem yekaimu be'atzum mishleach monos matanis levyonim. Even younger than people who are chayev, means ktanim should also do mishleach monos and matanis levyonim. And in the letter, what letter was that the Rebbe sent to the moizdos? It's a letter in Yiddish where the Rebbe says about that there's a chiyuv on every kid. Make sure every child, every person over bar mitzvah has to do the mitzvahs of Mikra Megillah, Mishlech Manos, and after it says regarding kids also, you could educate them to mekayim these mitzvahs. For example, from Mishlech Manos, you need 2 kinds of food, and the Rebbe writes an apple and a candy, or a piece of cake and a soda. Those are 2 examples the Rebbe gives us 2 things. Matanis levyonim, the Rebbe writes, Kemen yoytze zayn mit 2 cent, 1 cent zu jeder von 2 Orem elait. A penny to each. This was in 1961. I think that the value of a penny has dropped dramatically since then. And today give a nickel. No, it's a coin. Today you give a nickel. A prute, you give a nickel. Now, when you give Mishleach Monos, when you give Mishleach Monos, what are you supposed to give? The Rebbe says that interesting letter from the Rebbe in Tafshin Lamed Zayin, where the Rebbe writes, Bevadai Hamonos gam lemehadrim kosher. Make sure that the food that you're giving should be kosher lemehadrin. Don't just find something that's when they give out a miftzayim, don't just give out something that you're not sure if a person who's mehader bekashrus would be eating it. That's one of the highlights of the Rebbe when it comes to giving out mishleach manos. Also, that when you give mishleach manos to people, you should tell them, if you're going with tzayim, you should tell them that they should give it to somebody else. You should give them coins to give to tzedakah, give them the mishleach manos, they should give it weiter to the next person. So they should also be mekayim. They should also be mekayim the mitzvahs.
Give to them and then give to you.
You could do that also, yeah. I don't know about that. When there's a letter from the Rebbe, Michtav Klali, the Rebbe writes about the Miftzayim of Purim, the Rebbe writes as follows. This was Tafshin Lamed Zayin, a few days before Purim. The Rebbe says that Lezares are the Pam al Dvar Miftzah Purim, Lishtadel shekol echad ve'achas yikayim kol mitzvahs yimei Purim ve'inyoneim ke'ilchosam. Try to get every Jew to fulfill the mitzvahs of Purim. Hishtadel sayidei dibur. First of all, talk to them. Hadibur imam b'dvarim yitzim alev v'chol zeh v'alidei ma'aseh. What's ma'aseh? B'mokim u'be'inyan sheyesh tzoyrech. In a place where it's needed. Lehamtzi bal kriya. To arrange for the place to have a bal koire. The ha-megillah. For learning megillah. U'beyoim gam the parshas v'yav v'yamalek. Make sure there's one for v'yav for Amalek. Monos. You should have prepared mishleach monos. And coins for matanis levyonim, and also attached to it kitzur halachas purim hilchas purim atzrichos, a purim guide of what they have to do. Yeah, and kitzur parshas yemei purim ha'elu v'tokfoi shel nes. And on the footnote on this about fulfilling teaching mashleach manas and matanis levyonim, the Rebbe adds one thing in the footnote, just quotes the lashon of the Rambam. Mutav la'adam la'harvest matanis levyonim la'harvest v'sudosim mishleach manas l'reiyu. Now, this is before Purim. On Purim, when you're going on Miftzayim, and you're short on time, there's a sikha from the Rebbe. I don't have the date now, but just read it. I think it's one of the Lameds. The Rebbe says, "V'negea lemiftzah Purim noisef al diburim acherim shezu inyan shotev labriyos hadiburim moim v'negea kol pratin in Purim beikar v'negea mishleach monos u'matanis levyonim sheharei I efshar lis'akei v'likres ha-megillah avur kol echad כיוון שאין לדבר סוף. אלא המבצע מסבתי בכך שמספרים להם אוידס החיובים שיכולים להשתתף בהם מיד, על ידי זה שמסייעים ונויסים להם עניונים שבהם יכולים לקיים משלוח מונס ומתונס לאביונים, which is טוב לבריאס. That is when it comes, if you're going on Meftzayim, obviously if there is an opportunity to read Mikra Megillah and people are going to listen to every word, it's good. Otherwise, Matanis Levyonim and Mishleach Manas. What's the minimum? L'chatchila, you're supposed to give Mishleach Manas something which is chashuv, something which has value in it, not only for you, but also for the person who receives it. It should be something valuable for both of you. L'chatchila, it should be nice, something which is better to have, something which they could be able to eat in the Seudah of Purim, but the minimum is the Rebbe says a kazayis of something. It has to be two different,
Both items each have to be exact?
Yeah. There was one time when they gave, I think, raisins, and that's when the Rebbe gave a comment on make sure there's a kazais. The little boxes of raisins. I don't think they're the size of a kazais. So therefore, if you give one candy,
What's a kazayis of a drink?
it's not kazais, seravias. You give two kinds of food, it doesn't have to be two separate brachas. Just if you take one piece of cake and cut it in two, it does not count as two, it counts as one piece that became together. The same way if you give two candies, or even if they're big, each one's a kazayis, still does not count as two kinds of food, unless you give two different kinds of food. Different flavors does not count. It's all sugar and fake flavoring. It doesn't make a difference. When it comes to the Seudah of Purim, some of you are recently married. It's probably going to be the first time you're going to have a Seudah Purim. So just know what it's about. If you're as a bacher, you go on Meftzayim, Seudah Purim, you have to make sure you travel on Purim, you go on Meftzayim to make sure I was as a bacher, you always had, we had a bag of rolls in the car and a kvart and a towel. Because we knew at least we'll be able to wash before Shkia, stop at the gas station, buy a couple of beers, and have Seudah Purim at that location with a designated driver. That was for that. The Chatchila is supposed to start the Seudah a long time before Shkia. The Iker Seudah has to be before Shkia. She eat bread and meat and drink wine. But the minhag already became you start the Seudah much later. The Rabbeim started the Seudah much later, towards the end of the day. And the Iker Seudah was not during the day, but was actually during the night. Chiyuv, Chayav Inish L'Besumah B'Poraya. Yeah, if you have time, do kazais, more than kazais. Enough to be able to do benching. Chayav Inish L'Besumah B'Poraya, a person has an obligation to get drunk on Purim. You don't have to get drunk on wine, although it's better to drink wine. It is better to drink wine because wine is part of the Seudah, but you could get drunk on other things. Anything which gets you to that stage of getting drunk. If you start the Seudah before, you're benching after Tzes, you say Valanissim. If you davened Ma'ariv before you benched, you lost your right to say Valanissim. If you are drunk to a state that you don't know really what's going on with you, you are pater from the mitzvahs, make sure to be able to stay, even in the level of drunkenness should be enough. You should be able to daven Ma'ariv, have somebody remind you to daven Ma'ariv, and to be able to bench. It's not a reason if you want to get drunk, you could do it, but still remember that you have mitzvahs you still have to fulfill. You have to bench, which is a deraisa. You have to say Krishma by night, which is also a deraisa. Ma'ariv, which is the Rabbanon. And if you get drunk too fast before you finish eating, before you eat basar v'dagim, I don't know if you're mekayim the mitzvah of the meal. So just have that in mind. Now, there is, I have a few minutes left, there's a very, very interesting letter from the Rebbe which was written before the Nasius. Purim Tafshin Daled. I think this letter was written to, as Shalach Manas, it's written to Moshe Pinchas Katz. And the Rebbe explains over here four questions. Question number one, what's the connection of Shalach Manas to Purim? Question number two, why by Shalach Manas it says Mishloach Manas, send, and by Avyonim it only says Matanas LeAvyonim? Why by Shalach Manas it's Ish LeRe'ehu to one person, and by Matanas LeAvyonim it's two Avyonim? And why by Matanas LeAvyonim you give one thing to each of the two people, and by Mishloach Manas you give two things to one person? And the Rebbe says that Behegdem Yuvnu Kol Diyukim Elu Bechada Machte. It's in Chelik Aleph of Iglis Purim Toshen Dalet. The Rebbe writes all these Diyukim we explain in one shot by explaining Inyan Purim Al Burye Bebiur Bekitzur Kenas Man Grom Lichtiv Barichus. And then it's about a few pages long. And the Kuda is that the Rebbe explains as follows. The general idea of Purim is that was a Kolel Inyan to destroy the gufim of the Yidden, to destroy completely the Yidden. In Ruchnius, what happened on Purim was also something, Kimu Mashakiblu Kvar. What was the purpose? Kimu Mashakiblu Kvar, they accepted what they received on Matan Torah. Matan Torah, the purpose of Matan Torah is to make this world a Dira B'Sachtoinim. And they were married Mekabel Torah over there. What happens is, after Matan Torah, the world became more Megushim, and the Yidden became more Megushim, and it's harder to work. But on Purim, that was already, it was completed, and then they got the strength to do it. So therefore, he explains, after the Rebbe explains, the four answers, and it's definitely recommended that you look at it. And we will stop now. Freilich in Purim. I'll see you Sunday morning. Whoever's coming tomorrow, 10 o'clock.